I think that there's a little bit of a delay coming on my side with your sound. So I don't know if you asked a question, but I didn't hear it.
No, we were going through the roll up, and but now I'll ask a question of introduce yourself and in common ground and what is so special about it. We, by the way, we have the same problem in the U.S.
Yeah, I do follow in the United States. There's some really great models and movements. So I'm definitely trying to educate people in New Zealand, particularly the role players who can make policy and be able to do things differently. I'm trying to bring some of those good ideas from America here to New Zealand.
Okay, and it's about housing and the price of housing and and the problem that causes for people, right? Common ground.
I heard around affordability. I'm sorry, the question was a little bit choppy for me to hear. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, it's about housing and the lack of housing, uh, the lack of good housing, and that it's a right for people. They have to live somewhere.
Yes, it's all of those things. It's the right to housing written into legislation, which we don't have in this country. It's recognizing what is affordable. There's different definitions of what is affordable, but our statistics here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, well, the international standard is that a house to either rent or to buy, in terms of those repayments that one is making to the bank or to the landlord, should only be one third at the most of a family's income. And in this country, we've got anything from 6 to 12 times what is somebody's income. And so people are spending more than 50% of their income
Yes.
rather than only up to 30%, meaning that what people have left to meet every single other one of their needs besides rent, it all has to fall within that, the rest 50%, which
Right.
is not enough. So it means that we've got then hidden poverty. We've got a lot of poverty that people have a roof, maybe, but then they can't afford most basics, even food.
Yeah, I was lucky in that I bought my first house in the '70s and I bought this house later on. But if it hadn't been for that, um, it would have been a disaster. Um, so let me tell you about Radical and how maybe we can merge. Um, the main idea about Radical is, excuse me, the main idea about Radical is that if we own more things, if we would own more things in common, we would be okay. If we had to collaborate, we'd be okay. And usually, the system that we live in now, the FIA system, caters to competition and things like that that don't add to human values. It doesn't do anything for me. Uh, you, I don't know about you, but here is you start to pin down any politician to talk about housing, um, or talk about anything, climate change or anything, and it's all done in bulk. So you have to vote for a Democrat to even be aligned with you, not to listen to you, but be aligned with you. Um, is that the same in New Zealand, or how does that work over there?
Well, I think in terms of our politicians, one of the reasons why we don't have some of the legislation that would help is because most of them own housing as an asset. And for instance, one of the very important legislations that most countries have, which is a capital gains tax, which means that if I buy a house at 300,000 and a couple of years later, without adding anything really to the house, but the housing prices just rise to, let's say, 450,000, and I sell that house, then I essentially have made an income of 150,000, maybe minus some expenses that one is incurred. Let's just round it off to 150,000. Now, normally, if I was having a business and making $150,000 profit, I would have to pay taxes, or if it was just income as an employee. But
Right.
if one owns a house in this country, you get that 150,000 tax free, because that's called a capital gains tax, which we don't have. And we've been many decades of lobbying for capital gains tax. And I think the reason why it doesn't get enacted is because pretty much all the politicians have used housing as their form of investment and
Yeah.
as their future retirement fund.
Yeah. And that's pretty close to here. We do have the taxes here, the capital gain taxes, but they don't make a difference. Um,
Mhm.
and housing is seen as assets, active
Mhm.
assets, rather than
Mhm.
a passive investment.
Mhm.
When
Mhm.
we bought our house, it was just a house, and then it became a house that was growing in price. So we bought it at $174,000, which sounds reasonable, and we sold it at $2.5 million. We bought a house more expensive than that, and I ended up paying no taxes really, because what I pay here and what I got from the house was completely different. So the thing is, again, to bring it back to radical, is
Mhm.
um, we believe we have to change the system. We have a system that we call fiat, which is everything. Is corporations of all shapes and forms, ownership is all fiat. It's all designed to separate you from the
Mhm.
wealth, and
Mhm.
um, and we want a system that's more like us and wants to build a community and things like a community. So um, written a couple of books that I have to talk about, and about radical companies and radical in detail and things like that, even in the science fiction book, trying to illustrate that. But it's very hard to get people hear it, and they think, oh, that's like that. And no, it's not like that. Oh, it's like that other thing. No, it's not like other thing. And it's very difficult to get the idea. So we wrote a children's book to see if that solves it. And the whole idea is that when we have a problem like this, it's not the revolution. I'm from Cuba, and I'm tired of revolutions. And when we can sit down, when we have problems like that, we can sit down and talk and figure out what we need to do, and see how it affects the community. And it affects the community more than the benefit, then you don't do it. Um, so so how does this sound compatible, or how does this sound?
Uh, are you saying, sorry, the question wasn't so clear? Is it that you are asking if it's compatible with with
With
that?
common ground, the things you want to do, and stuff like that.
Uh, um, sorry, there's just some delay in your sound. Can you just repeat that one more time and
Yeah,
perhaps speaking a
if
bit slower? I think it's so choppy, my reception on this side. Sorry about that. It's
no problem. Is what we're trying to do is people that align with us or we align with them. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
And do you think these align in any way?
Align. Well, yeah, I guess in terms of common ground, if I were to go with the meaning of it, the meaning is around the fact that we've got commons. The commons are the air, the soil, the water. These are things that we all have equal access to. And yet, when we privatize land, we then say that those things within that boundary of land are private, including the air, the
Yeah.
water, the land, etc. And so there's a paradigm shift in how we think about land and land ownership. Rather, in this country, before the white people, the Western people arrived, the colonialists arrived, we had
Oh, shit. Um, Carlos, I think we lost. So when she comes back, if you can merge the two. Here she goes. No, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now I can. Okay.
Now you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I start back at what I was saying around the common ground, the meaning of common ground with
Yes,
aligning
please.
with? Okay. So the meaning, there's two meanings of common ground. The one is around ownership versus guardianship and stewardship of land, as well as the common resources that Mother Earth provides of water,
Yes.
soil, air, and Mother Nature herself. And when we privatize land and property, we're basically removing that from others' ability to be able to have access to what is actually should be freely available for us to be able to steward in the way that is for the greatest good. So the common ground is really reestablishing the commons and how are we able to have a guardianship or a stewardship model instead of an ownership model when it comes to land and property. And the other common ground is around us being able to get along, understand each other, and be able to reach some, whether it be consensus or make decisions that are win-win. And when we're talking again about stewardship or guardianship of property and land, that's really important that we have the skills and the ability, the frameworks, the techniques to be able to find common ground with those with whom we are sharing, because it's different if you've got an ownership model, it's my way or the highway. You don't actually need to find any common ground, versus when we move the whole paradigm of ownership to stewardship and guardianship, we all of a sudden need to find common ground on how are we going to be together and how are we going to steward this land for the greatest good.
Right. Yeah, and that you mentioned the skills that it takes, and it does take a different set of skills. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, not my father so much, but other members of the family, if I said, "Oh, my friend hit me," and they said, "Did you hit him harder?" You know, they wanted that competition, and they wanted you to win. So it was for my own good, okay, but it didn't help me any. I mean, the rest, as I was growing up, I was very competitive, and even with my family and stuff like that, and that doesn't help. So there's a lot of skills that we have to acquire, and the problem is, how do we get the other people to adapt their skills? Um, how do you think we would do that? We could do that.
Well, I know that one of the things that I help folks with, I use a framework called nonviolent communication that was
Right.
developed by Marshall Rosenberg decades ago. And it focuses on observations instead of judgments and opinions and expectations. It has feelings and needs rather than focusing on positions of this is what I want. And it has requests rather than demands. And so it's a way of listening differently as well as expressing differently, where we're really trying to find what is at the heart of beyond the words that are used, what is actually at the heart of the meaning, and the needs of that person underneath those words, and being able to communicate with each other from that heart-centered space. So that's one of the things that I do in addition, because I believe that it goes hand in hand. We can't talk about a new paradigm if we also don't have those human-centered relational skills to be
Yes.
able to allow us. Otherwise, we're just going to keep defaulting to our usual way of interacting, which is, again, that more power over model. And so we're looking at how do we have power with? And that's a little bit of a scary place for some people because it means they've got to give a little bit up and they're not in control. And that can be a bit disorienting for people. And so it's offering ways for us to bring real life situations into a space to converse about it honestly and be able to try out different modes of communicating. So that I do offer that also as a service within the wider context of shifting our paradigm around housing, land use, neighborhood development, and
But
the structural.
it also affects misogyny and the rights of LGBT plus people and all that stuff. So it's a system, and whether you like it or not, it pulls you into it as much as possible. So it's not just land and housing; it extends beyond that. So and that's the thing. When we started this project, Jose and I had this thing of asking questions of each other. I was worse at it than he is, and but we ended up asking questions, and there's more value in the questions than there is in the answers. Nonviolent communications is a framework that I was influenced by as well, and it's great because it's great. So, but the problem is we live in the fiat world, and we want to move to this other thing, which we call radical. Radical, not in the sense of, I'm going to kill you or you're going to kill me or whatever. Is going to the root of the problem. What is the thing that moves all that and ends up being against you? I'm going to send you a paper that I just read by the economist called Brian. Shit, I forgot his name. But anyways, I'm going to send you a paper. It's about housing, and that is not the usual supply and demand. There are other things that work, and it might help you if you want me to throw it out. It doesn't matter. But I think it's a good paper, and again, is aimed at separating us from our livelihood, and that's not good. So, so one question I have for you is: you said that there's no legislation in New Zealand about anything that will help you. What do you think is missing?
In terms of legislation?
Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned, around the capital gains is one big one. There could be better legislation around. There's a policy called inclusionary zoning or inclusionary housing, which means that when a landowner has land in a rural area and it needs to be rezoned for residential, they are granted that rezoning by the local government. And then the value actually is retained by the developer, because then they're able to sell the parcels of that land for much higher than they had the land originally bought, because land at rural rates is much less than at residential rates. And so the only reason, though, that they're able to capture people to be able to live there is because they're close enough to where there are already amenities that the local community or even the local government is supplying. So whether it be schools, roading, libraries, shops, all the local businesses, the infrastructure that's nearby that has been developed and paid for by the local community.
Right.
So actually, the value that that land has is only able to be upvalued because it's actually taking advantage of the value that that local community, just by the nature of them going about their daily lives and interacting, has created that value in that community. So inclusionary zoning says that if we're going to give you greater value to be able to sell your plots at a much higher price than what you purchased for to people who are coming from this area or going to be using services in this area, then we actually want some of that value to stay with the community or be offered back to the community.
Right.
And so it says that the developer has to give 10 or 20% of either the land or the upvalued cost of that land to a charitable entity or back to the local government. So if, for instance, there's a community land trust or a housing trust operating that is offering affordable housing, that profit could go to that entity, or the developer itself could make part of their development themselves affordable, meaning that it would be adjusted to it depends on what the cost of living settings are in any one area to say what actually is affordable. Because as we were saying earlier, it's actually no more than 1/3 of an income. But what exactly, is that number? If you're talking, what is the developer's pricing of that housing? Supposed to be in the affordable range. So that is one policy. I think it's quite powerful. And it goes along with creating community land trusts, which is also something that local governments, particularly in America as well as in the UK, the local governments then assist with being able to set up those charitable entities that then hold land in perpetuity for the purpose of affordable housing. So those two go quite well together as levers. It could also be, for instance, that the local government usually requires what's called a development contribution. So that's a certain amount of money per plot that the developer has to give back to the local council. Well, that could actually be lowered if, again, those plots are given to affordable housing instead of the regular price.
Yeah, that's the way it works here.
Yeah. So those are just a few. I've actually just made my own podcast and submitted a news article about those things that local government specifically has available to it. And then, of course, you have also your central, or I guess in America, it's maybe called the national government, that then can make other legislation.
Yeah, the trick here is affordable housing. But affordable is it's not defined as far as I'm concerned. And usually affordable housing is a reasonable price, but not so low that somebody not making a lot of money can afford it. In this community, not that far from here, there was a farm in the middle of town, huge farm, and they just sold it, and they're making. They have made a bunch of um, apartments and things like that. Um, and there's affordable housing in some places, and that gives them the blessing to go on. So yeah, it's a system again that is part of the system that keeps the whole thing rolling instead of
Mm.
accumulating wealth and stuff like that. And I get nothing against wealth, but I get a lot against wealth if it harms other people. You know,
Mhm,
if it's
mhm.
extracted from other people, then that's a problem. If you do it because your own contribution, you invented something, that's fine. Um, but um, but yeah, that's the problem.
I I did want to share another policy with you that I think is also quite radical. It's from Wales. So the country of Wales decided they wanted to be a one planet country so that the people of that country only are operating their lives as if there's one Earth rather than in America. I think every American on average is operating their lives as if there was seven planets, seven Earths. I think New Zealand we're sitting at five, just a little bit less. But needing five planets to meet all, and of course, then there's other countries that are way below, just because that's the nature of how much resources that each person is using. But
Um,
so Wales is sitting at, more than a one planet, but they've made a whole nationwide policy called One Planet Development.
hmm,
And if someone's developing a new neighborhood or a new homestead, they can apply under the One Planet Development planning regulations, which then allow them certain abilities, maybe cost reductions of development, if they can show that what they're going to be doing on that land over time is going to give them a one planet output. So it might be the way they're doing their agriculture, the way they're capturing and storing their water, the way that they're doing carbon sequestration, the housing and materials they're using for building.
right.
So those are the things that they can do in the development, which reduces its impact and increases its positive impact. And the whole country has got that available to them. And so
Huh.
that's what I would love to see here in this country as well, a policy which rewards positive impact and then has maybe negative consequences for those that want to do business as usual kind of development, because actually who pays in the end, we actually pay as a whole community or as a whole country when we have a housing development that is using more than one planet worth of energy and resources.
So we have an opportunity to put those links with their some more explanations um, in the podcast notes or whatever Carlos
Mhm.
calls them, and so he'll ask you for it because it sounds really interesting.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I mean, the Industrial Revolution started out of the British Islands, and it would be it would be quite a laugh that the researching of the Earth is it comes from the same place. So
Mm.
it's like you created the problem and you now create the solution. So
Mhm.
I'll take it anywhere I can. Um, I don't know if you have anything to say for closing or.
I guess I did just want to add one other kind of legislation, which I believe you have in America. And again, I guess the radical nature of it is such that we're again, moving away from private and hierarchical ownership to more egalitarian and shared ownership, which is the cooperative housing model, which allows for folks to own a share in a company, a cooperative company, but that it's limited equity, meaning that the house prices don't enter the market. When a house or the property is sold, it goes back to the cooperative, which then makes it available to the next family at pretty much the same price, just with a bit of a cost of living increase. So that's a way of being able to make a security of tenure, meaning that people are secure to be able to stay where they are for a long period of time without having the cost of being there continuously rising because of either a landlord putting up the price, or it's usually the case if folks are renting. But in this case, it's sort of like a mixture between ownership and rental. So they own a part of the company, but they're actually sort of renting the space so the company owns a building or a property, and people are given permission to occupy. So there's so many different models, from how we could look at it from a global perspective, like what Wales is doing, all the way down to, well, do we have legislation which even allows these alternative, or in some cases, it's not necessarily an alternative housing model. It actually exists, but it's not allowed yet by legislation in that country. As New Zealand, we don't have that legislation.
Right.
So I kind of want to end to say that if people are interested in making some sort of a solution wherever they're living in their community to this housing crisis, whether they're themselves caught in it and want to advocate for better solutions, if they're working for government in some way, if they're a developer or a landowner, there's absolutely something that each person can do at their within their capacity to make a difference. And people can get in touch with me if they would like to see those models and ways that people can make some sort of a positive contribution. And of course, then it's, really it's changing. It is a paradigm shift. So we just need to be persistent in our working, in our narrative to get this new paradigm in. And I think local, that we're not trying to necessarily change the whole country. But if each one of us just thinks, what can I do in my local place? Absolutely change is possible.
Yes. And I'm really big on thinking local, in that we know each other, we know the situation here, and we know what to do. In the state of California, the state is mandating certain things of the town to have more people and more of this and more of that. And it's not good for this area. This area is a very narrow valley, and it happens that way. But they're not here. They're from San Francisco or whatever. So anyways, yeah, I what I invite you is give all the stuff to Carlos, and we can put it in the notes, and then we'll go back to you with questions and stuff. So we can help you with that. I have to please mention the incoming on the website. And I don't know what the upcoming is, so I'm going to look. I still see Zola, so I don't know what to announce. So anyways, thank you very much. Just a website. Oh, so there's a radical website, www.radicalworld.live, P/P/upcoming -1. I don't know what -1, but that's it. That's what he wanted me to announce. And thank you very much for your time and your attention and everything. and some of the lessons that you have taught us. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thanks for hosting me. It's nice to be able to share my all the resources that I have and help hopefully give people hope and some agency in their local area.
Agency, that's very important.
That's it.
So,
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. And I look forward to continuing to follow what you are offering on a regular basis under this banner of Radical World.
okay, will do.
Thank you.
So, Carlos, anytime you want to do the